el doctor Luca Iandoli. He's originally from Avellino, Italia, and he is currently a resident in the city of New York. I also welcome Miriam, who works all the logistics to our campus. He is currently the Associate Dean of Global Programs and Research in the College of Professional Studies at St. John's University in New York City. He's also professor in the Division of Computer Science. So you're going to see how art and science meet today. His teaching focus, creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, 3 areas that I love. He's also teaches design of organizational systems at the graduate level and in executive programs. He has been a visiting professor of innovation management in España and in Finland. He has written more than 24 refereed international articles for journals, more than 5 books, has contributed with more than 10 book chapters in a span of 17 years maybe. I was looking and trying to add and deduct to see how many years it's been. And has presented more than 50 papers in conferences. It's a small feat to do this. In his career, he's launched and executed several international programs, including summer schools, exchange programs, and dual degrees. This allows him to offer multiple opportunities for students from other countries to come, which is something that we've talked about to see how he can help us try and develop something like that here, and helps them to engage from the cultures of different countries. During his career, he's accomplished numerous research projects, journal articles, books, and I could continue to talk because his resume is quite long, but I think it's more important that we hear from him. So he's going to talk to us about the art of science. Okay, Luca.
Like Zuma said, what I want to do is to give you a different angle. So I'm going to share with you some recent results, especially from the fields of cognitive science and recent developments, and some implication of these discoveries for particularly for design. When I say design, I use design in a very large general sense of the word. So design is really about solving problems in an effective way. This is what I have on my plate for you. First of all, why beauty matters, and I'm going to call this aesthetic reasoning. I'm going to try to convince you that our reason, human reasoning, is predominantly aesthetic, and I'll try to explain what I mean with that. So first of all, why we need it, how we developed this skill through evolution, and how does it work based on some recent findings in neuroscience. The second part of the presentation is about the relationship between aesthetic reasoning and complexity. Because my point is that aesthetic reasoning helps us to solve complex problems, and that's why it's important for us to nurture and to hone. And I will introduce this concept of effective complexity later on. And then I'm going to see, quickly review with you some possible implication, what it means to have an aesthetic perspective to innovation in different fields. So, let's start with this. Do you like this picture? It's pretty powerful, isn't it? This is Salgado, is a famous photographer. It's quite an old picture from the Gulf War, the first Gulf War. And why do you think this picture is interesting at the very least? Yeah, why not? It's better because I have a lot of visuals, a lot of arts.
Well, it's the negativity space, like the contrast is quite
is super
dramatic.
powerful, right?
Yes.
Well, you know from the description what this event is about, so the war and everything, so the description explain a little bit. But you know, how many people can take a picture of a oil well, even on fire, and not get this effect, right? So, what is the main point of this presentation is something that I wanted to illustrate with an example at the very beginning. Because what I'm trying to say is this, that we know this, right, in everyday common sense. We say one picture is worth more than 1,000 words. So the question is, why is that? And I think this is why. Because effective human communication is about delivering a lot of meaning with the minimum amount of information. Okay? Minimum amount of information, lot of meaning. Now, let's put this more into, let's look at this in a more systemic and scientific way. So first of all, why we need aesthetic reasoning? For a bunch of reasons. First of all, to handle a huge amount of data to perception. Second, because we need simple rules to understand the world. For instance, naive physics. Even if you don't know physics, you know what gravity is, you know how to behave in the physical world. Pattern recognition and copy with ambiguity. So more in practice, what do we do when we handle a huge amount of data? We compress information. Our brain compresses information. We need simple rules to predict events. Like, I have to catch a ball, so I know where the ball is going to be when I'm playing ball, for instance. Why do I need pattern recognition? Because we don't have to discover the word every time. We can use our knowledge. So once we learn something, a pattern, we just reuse it. I'm going to give you an example of any of this. And then finally, copy with ambiguity. The information we have has a lot of uncertainty of different types, but we need to make decisions at the end of the day. We cannot just stay there contemplating. At the end, we have to decide. So all of these things evolved in a way through our history as a species to increase what Darwinists call fitness, evolutionary fitness, right? And so basically, we are going there. Where we are going, this is just to make a little bit fun of it. I introduced this new species that is called Homo digitans, because it's a little man, you know. So we got the erected position, we stand it, and then now we're going down again. And it's you know, it's kind of a joke, but if you look at what digital technology does for us, well, it compresses information for us, it predicts events for us, it classifies knowledge for us, and it makes decisions for us. So yeah, unfortunately, in the sense that we still make decisions, but we increasingly rely on the decisions that, you know, the algorithm can do for us. For instance, I have to go from A to B, I use Google Map, the Google Map is going to tell me how to go from A to B. Now, I could do the decision by myself, but instead I depend on the machine, right? So, I mean, it's a joke, but it's a bit of a dark side of this joke. I think we should be aware of it a little bit. Anyway, this is not the subject of the presentation, but it's kind of in the background. Just one thing, when I say aesthetic, because aesthetic sometimes is confused just with artistic, that's not the full meaning of the word. Aesthetic comes from the Greek word, ancient Greek word, that means basically perception. So it has to do with perception, with knowledge that we acquire with the senses, okay? So let's see some example. How aesthetic reasoning helps us to compress information. I have a little visual here. First of all, why we need to compress information? Because the sheer amount of data we get through perception is just amazingly huge. So there are numbers that people estimate in different ways, but it's literally billions of bits per second. So of course, how can we process all of this information? Do we really process all of this information? That's a good question. But basically, one function of our brain is to provide us with functionalities that actually help us to do this, especially the visual part. According to some estimates, 30% of our brain is just for the vision. So you understand how important that is. Anyway, I'm not a neuroscientist, so forgive me if I say something incorrect. But the big picture is, I'm a user of this knowledge. I'm predominantly a designer, a developer. That basically does a segmentation of experience into granule of information that, by the way, we connect to some elementary primitive shapes and a concept that we already have in our mind. Those are kind of present, so we combining the information that comes from the eye and these primitives, these visual primitives, we have an image in our brain. So again, one picture worth more than 1,000 words. So what is this? You recognize anything in that?
Looks like the cross section of some microscopic thing.
It's like we don't know. It could be bacteria, it could be all kind of things. And what about this?
Painting.
I'm zooming out, so to help you. Space, like outer space, like the Earth from yeah, could be. Now it starts to make sense. Okay, this is like a little point in a painting. You recognize the painting yet?
Degas? Is Degas?
It's Degas. Good. Actually, that is just a detail of the painting. This is another detail. This is a scene in the painting, and just the whole painting. So that's the little thing that I showed you at the beginning is just a little point on down there, right? So the question is, so this is Degas, Renoir, sorry, so the question is, do we see that? Do we see that? Do we see the little piece? The answer is difficult because in a sense we do, in a sense we don't. We do because actually our receptors and all the system that connects the eyes to the brain actually process that bit of information. But of course at the conscious level we are not aware of that little piece. But deep down it's like we are. And in a sense it's like we have this ability of moving back and forth depending on what we want to do with this visual. So we can go very, very deep down in details and very, very general. So we can move back and forth between fine grain and coarse grain depending on the task we have to accomplish. So this is just an example of how the brain processes information. There are many other ways it does it. Let's look at aesthetic rules very quickly. Aesthetic rules, I call that aesthetics because they're again based on perception. So for instance, things like close object seems larger than far away object, so intuitive perspective. Generally, the light comes from the top. Generally, shades are always darker, and things like that. Do we know optics? Do we know physics? Not necessarily. Some of us do, but most of us don't. And still we manage because these simple rules are wired in our brain. And this book, if you want to have a sense of how this works, it's called Gut Feelings. It's very interesting. I definitely recommend it to you. The point of the book is that that's called gut feelings because a lot of decisions we make it from the gut, meaning that there's an emotional component to the decision that is part of this big puzzle that I'm trying to build for you. Number 3, pattern recognition. This is interesting because yesterday we were talking about this, exactly this particular study. And basically what we do, one way we compress information, we reuse information is because we identify simple patterns. Now, apparently, despite the fact that our faces are very complex and very different, so every face is different, right? Our brain just needs not too many points to recognize a face. Basically, this triangle is very important, and this little triangle down here. So this combination of these two triangles has enough information to distinguish a face from another face. So we don't need to look at all the details. So much so that if I ask you, can you, after you see a person for the first time, and then I ask you, can you describe, right? Can you describe this person, or can you draw, right? It's very hard. But if you see the person, you can immediately recognize, if it's not too far in time. So, incidentally, this study has been done with the technology that is called eye tracking. That it's very cool. It's used in a lot of fields, not just in neuroscience, also in marketing. Because, for instance, you want to see where our customers are pointing their attention when they look at something like packaging or a supermarket display. Another countless application, and it's also kind of affordable. You can start with $1,000. You can buy a kit with the software and the glasses, and you can study with your students. Of course, you can go up to more sophisticated, equipment, but to start with, it's very interesting, and for a lot of applications, so something you might look into literally. This is another technique. It's called heat patterns. That's the same objective. So it just emphasizes where we put attention when we look at something. And again, you can see here that we, in this famous painting, we could recognize shapes, like a tree, the moon, because we already know what a tree looks like. So we just look for a tree, and we find a tree, and we say, oh, that looks like a tree, and we match. Okay? Last one, and I have a little game here for you. I hope you haven't seen this before. What do you see here?
A man in the top of a horse.
Yes.
A man riding a horse. Riding a horse.
I saw
You see someone riding a horse?
Someone riding a horse.
It's okay if you don't see it. It takes a
Oh, now
while.
you want this one there.
And some people might not
With a
not see
cowboy
it.
hat, that's a cowboy
The
hat.
cowboy hat, right? Actually, most people, when I do this game all the time, I ask, how did you figure out it was a cowboy or a horse? Most people say, oh, because I saw the hat. And why? So you start from the head, and if you know what a cowboy is, you know the hat is associated with a cowboy. So you say, oh, if there's a hat, there's a cowboy hat, there must be a cowboy. So you look for a cowboy. So you start from the top and you go down. Some other people look, start from the horse, anyway. You start with a detail. You put this detail in your mind. You go back. Do you see the cowboy? There's someone who still don't see the cowboy. So this is the head. This is the body. This is the legs. The body of the horse, and this is the man on the horse. Okay. Some other people see other things. I mean, it's surprising. But when someone says, "Oh, I see a cowboy," most people see a cowboy, right? Anyway, the process is interesting. We start with a little detail. We recognize the detail. We project. We make an inference. Okay, if there's a detail, this must be the rest of that detail. So, and then because we have a mental model of what a cowboy on a horse looks like, and we try to impose this. So anyway, this is important because this is the way we decide and we solve ambiguity. So when we have conflicting information, when we have confusing information, or where we do not have enough information, what we do, we fill the dots. We fill the dots choosing by a possible limited number of alternatives, and we pick up the one that is the closest in our mind, which is a problem. Because if you have the wrong framework, if you have the wrong mental model, you're going to pick the wrong one. Especially when information is not, when information is new, it's novel. Okay? Because when it's business as usual, that works beautifully. Because okay, I know this, I've been here many times, I know that behind that bush there might be a lion, I'm going to stay away. Okay? And the lion is always there. But you change your environment because you move to a new place. There's no lion, there's a tiger. You never saw a tiger. You do not have a mental model of a tiger. You expect a lion over there, there's a tiger over there, and you die. Okay, so, but it's important because somehow evolution has equipped us with ways to deal with this. So that's why we continuously are forward between reusing the knowledge we have and finding out new ways of dealing with problems. And this is why it's so interesting. How aesthetic reasoning helps us to do this. So, how we got it? I call this the aesthetic animal. Man is an aesthetic animal. And you might have seen prehistoric art examples, right? And the question was, this question still does not have an answer everybody agree on, but why humans, at some point of their evolution, started to do art. Okay, there are many theories. One theory that I like, and many people actually converge towards, at least there was this empirical observation. So it's not coincidental that the development of artistic representation started exactly when Homo sapiens went through this thing that's called the cognitive revolution, which in a few words means our ability to think about abstract things, to use imagination to figure out things that do not exist. Okay? This is something that other animals cannot do, like we do. So, art is just a way through which this power of imagination, this abstract thinking manifests itself. And it's important for our success as a species because it gave us three fundamental abilities. And these two books are great if you want to read about this stuff. So, first of all, when you do a picture, I would say a picture that's worth 1,000 words. You can transmit a lot of information about the world. So this is what a bull look like. Probably this was used to teach kids. You know what a bull. It's much easier to teach it this way as opposed to bring the kid close to the bull, right? This is dangerous. And so we do this still today, like with academics do this still today. We do simulation. We show you picture, and we say the real world is a little bit different, but not that different. Okay, so. This is number one. Number two, there's a lot of social life in this picture. It's very amazing, you know, to look at that. So this because this is a group activity. Hunting was a group activity. So people started to imagine social relationship and to visualize them. And number three, ability to transmit information about things that do not really exist. Like for instance, religion, magic, and later on politics and more sophisticated stuff. And what is that in the glue for our society is actually the way we believe in this abstract superhuman construct that keeps us together. And that can be different. It could be democracy, it could be you name it. In different times of history has been different things. But what these three things work and why these three things are so important? Because they help us to cooperate, to work together, and to change our behavior substantially without changing one single gene. In 2,000 years, we are completely different than people from 2,000 years ago. But if you look at our DNA, it's not different. So we change without changing biologically. That's important. The other animals, to change, it takes millions of years of evolution because just to develop a neuron that goes this way instead of this way, right? Instead, we are so fast. So this is also another reflection. Innovation is always the result of collective endeavor. Never fall prey of the bias that innovation is because you have the inventor, the genius, the great man or the great woman. It's always a collective effort. And then, of course, you have exceptional individuals here and there. Very interesting, this one, too. There's some studies that show that, you know what these are? Yeah. So they will use it like a knife or like sort of arms. But they're just stone that were modeled in this way. And they found some of those that were never used. So they had no sign of wear and tear, which means they were never used, which means that probably they were made just because they were beautiful. So they really started to do because they were useful, and then at some point it became something that people started to contemplate as a work of art. But it's very interesting because one of the first examples in which beauty and functionality work together. They don't always work together. Okay, sometimes you have beautiful things that don't work. Sometimes you have things that work, they're ugly. Right? I think this one is more difficult. This one, something works has its own beauty, okay? But you can have beautiful things that don't work. And so this is just a good combination of the two. How does it work? Just a brief overview of a few interesting findings. And if you want to know more, there are these 3 books here. You don't need to be a neuroscientist to read those. But of course, these are written by neuroscientists. So you can go back to their research if you want to know more, but it's a good introduction. And basically, they all converge toward this the perception of art and beauty in general teaches us how the brain understands and resolves complexity, which is the point of this presentation. Let me give you just an example. This is an experiment that Semil Zeki did. Okay, he gave people a picture of, a painting in which there's beautiful woman, naked beautiful woman. Most people will like this image like as pleasant or so let's say there's some visual beauty. Of course, this is very subjective, it's cultural, sensitive, so different people, different places, or different time would rate this differently. But for our times, for our culture, or for the culture of the people, the Semil Zeki used it as subjects. That was on image. Anyway, the interesting part is the left side. So what he did, he recorded the reaction of our brain to the exposure to this beautiful image. And he found some activation patterns that are very complicated using a technique called fMRI, which basically colors the area of the brain that are activated the most. And he found, he did this for a beautiful painting, and then he did the same with ugly paintings. Okay? I guess you agree that these are a bit uglier than the other one. You might not particularly like the other one, but these are definitely ugly. So when people are exposed to this, and when people are exposed to this, the patterns in the brain, they change a little bit. Some patterns are the same because the vision is the same. It works. The vision collects the information. It pushes back to the center where this information is elaborated. But the terminal point is different. So this one actually was similar to the feeling that we feel when we look at the person we love or we like. There was similar pattern. This other one instead activated another region of the brain that is normally associated with the necessity to do something about it, which is called amygdala, and normally this governs our pulsion to move. So, and normally in a under stress situation. So for instance, fight or flight. So the ugly stimulus put us in a stress condition in which we wanted to do something, either run away or smash the painting, we don't know. Okay? So it's interesting. It's interesting because it's not, beauty is not so disinterested contemplation as we might think. It's actually a function. And so beauty is important for reproductive reasons, for instance. So we look for a beautiful body because we want to have kids, and our genes push us to do that. So there's more than just art. And I just got this book. This book is phenomenal. It just came out. And he said this thing. There's a theorem that we proved on a mathematical basis. He calls fitness beat the truth. Meaning, what we see is not an objective reality. What we see is a fiction that our brain builds, which doesn't mean the objective reality does not exist. It exists, we just don't see it. And why we don't see it? Because if we would see it, we would die. We would go extinct, actually. Because there's no payoff in seeing the truth in the sense of having a very accurate representation of the reality. But we are very selective in extracting what it serves us in a way that we improve our fitness. And he writes this thing that I loved. He said, beauty is the way we perceive fitness payoff. So where is beauty, we see more fitness. So more success for our species. Okay? So this is very important. So it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It matters if they help us to survive. Okay, now let's go to the side. So this is a little bit of the background. A few visual, another little visual game for you. I'm going to show you a few paintings. Like this one, kind of borderline abstract. This one, more realistically romantic, unstable. How about this one? The Peter Bruegel full of the rebel angels. It refers to the Bible history, when the angels rebel against God and bad ones go to hell. And when they fall down, they transform themselves from diving creatures to some kind of beast, very strange beings. It's so rich, right? It's so full of details. So about this one. The Jackson Pollock is complete abstract. It's actually not that chaotic as it might seem. There's a very interesting study done on Pollock painting. They show that Pollock painting have a fractal structure because of the way he painted it, that particular text. So that's why we kind of attract, because even if we don't know, we find some structure in there. There is a fractal. A fractal is a mathematical object. Anyway, the point is that we tend to be overwhelmed by complexity. So this painting I've ordered in sort of, sort of increasing complexity. Now, again, we have different personal tastes, but if I ask you, or if I ask most people, what among in this continuum, which paintings do you like the most, or give you more pleasure when you look at them? What do you think it happens? Most people will probably choose this, this part of the spectrum. So something that is moderately complex, not too simple, not too complicated. And this is something we are trying to demonstrate with the research that I'm doing with my colleague in Italy. What we do, in fact, we tend to bring our perception always in this middle point. So when something is too complex, we try to simplify it. When something is too simple, we try to complexify it. Okay? And this is basically the game that we play with complexity. And apparently Einstein said, so I don't know if it's wrong, but it's always cool to have Einstein say something that endorses what you're saying. But apparently say everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. Okay? Okay, so how we model this concept, effective complexity. This person, Germán, is a physicist and won a Nobel Prize in physics. And he came out with a method to measure this. It goes like this, more or less. So it peaks in the presence of intermediate complexity, and it's very low when something is too simple or when something is too complex. It's interesting because this idea I found in so many different studies, not just this particular formulation. But what it says is that effective complexity has to do with compression, how well we compress information. Okay, and it's true in different fields. It's true in art. So Roland Barthes said, art, great art, is a system in which no information is wasted. So artists use just the right amount of information to convey their meaning. And it's true in design. This designer said, we need some we enjoy some complexity in the products. We don't want something that is too simple. We don't want something that is too complicated. It's true in psychology, or perception. It's true in neuroscience. All of them converge toward this very interesting result that we tend to want this intermediate level of complexity. So ideally, our mind plays this game. We move back and forth when we are exposed to something, and we try to find the middle point. So if we are designing something, anytime you solve a problem, think about it. Like a new academic program, we start with something, and we make it, normally we make it more complex than it should be, and we realize that, and we cut some stuff out. And ultimately it's about being human. What is the difference, the ultimate difference between us and a machine? It's not in the logic. In the logic, they already beat us. But in the aesthetic reason, they are not there yet. I know they will never be, because there's an emotional component. And I think the real test of Turing for the new artificial intelligence is if a machine can feel an emotion. Because the old test in Turing test was just, if you cannot distinguish a machine from a human being, the machine passed the test. That happens already. So that one has been passed. But the emotional test, I don't know. I don't know if that will be ever passed. Anyway, I regularly, I do my best to publish some of these ideas on a blog, of course, more academic stuff, but the blog is more for like a quick reading, and also you don't need to be a specialist. So if you want to follow me on this, let me know what you think about these things. We can connect through this website that is called Elegant Design Thinking. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.